You might have seen a couple of videos back that this was 42 cubic meters of gravel. Went from over here on the left up about 4.5 feet deep or 5. Come down over there. So they've bagged it up and used it. Looks like it's still about 8 or 9 inches deep here. And we don't just spread that out. We bag it up and use it. We paid for it. We're going to put it in the house. If it was part of the main house structure, we would save it for some other thing. The dirty kitchen, we use top grade, off the top gravel. This gravel is gray in the picture, but if you get it wet, it turns black, like obsidian rock. I'm not sure what it is, but it's extremely hard gravel. And the strength of concrete comes from the hardness. It's just for the quarry it comes from. We're not really paying a premium price for this really hard rock. Now, it does come from the opposite side of Manila, but the truck that hauls it is from up there. So there's no charge for going up there to get it because that's where he's leaving from. So we're really happy with the rock. And we get our so-called sand from him too. You see a lot of people complain about the sand having all those pebbles in it. And if you're rendering your house, you have to screen them out. They don't really offer a service to screen that out and just send you the sand. And if you're using it in mortar, there's always 1 or 2 big pieces that screw up your mortar joints if you're putting up hollow blocks. But they generally put about 1.25 inch mortar joints in the hollow blocks, just because they're so weak. You know, you're getting some concrete in there. But for rendering, you have to take all those pebbles out. Now, when you're mixing concrete, you know, I had a thought, well, let's make sand out of it. We'll just take the pebbles out. We know how to do it. Then I got to looking at it. You got a jar. You can see through the plastic jar. It was like a half-gallon of tomato sauce kind of jar. And I put the stone in there, and I started mixing gravel in until it started to raise the height of the stone. In other words, you put it in there and then roll it across the floor a few times. It's about a 2-gallon container. And you got your container marked on the outside how deep the rock was, 3/4 stone. And so this gravel starts disappearing inside of the stone. It starts filling up the spaces. And when it's come up like 3/4 inch or so, which it starts out and then comes up pretty quick after that, because you're really just adding 1 for 1. You put in 2 cups of pea gravel and it's already saturated with pea gravel. Then you get 2 cups on the top. It's all mixed in, but you know what I mean. You're trying to find out how much pea gravel and sand that's delivered to your site goes with how much rock delivered to your site. And so that you can figure out whether it's, like we're using 1 Portland cement, 2 sand, 3 gravel. Because that makes the most consolidated rock we can make. And then you put in your Portland cement. Just put it in dry. Just keep putting it in until you figure out how much Portland cement. And tamp it, tap it on the floor. Bounce it down a few times and get it down in there and pack it a little bit. And keep putting in Portland cement. And you're basically trying to figure out how much it goes into the spaces between the rock. And that's not enough to make concrete. That's enough to fill up the spaces. But this chemically reacts, and that it's kiln-dried limestone is ground up. They just absolutely abuse a piece of limestone until it turns into powder. But that's going to rehydrate and chemically bond up inside the surfaces of the rocks. So you have to add some more for that. And we come out with 1 Portland cement, 2 of our gravelly sand, and 3 of our 3/4 inch black stone. And best I can tell from online research, we're making concretes, it's around 5,000 psi to 5,800. There's variables involved, but if we keep the water down to what it's supposed to be, we can make 5,800 psi concrete out of our materials because we know how much to put together. Now, our mix is not right for everybody because there's a big variation in the size of the 3/4 stone. Our 3/4 stone, I would say, runs small. There's not a lot of big 1-inch pieces in it. There's nothing really smaller than 3/4. That's screened out. But the ones that are bigger, there's less of it. Until you get to the ones that are the size of a softball that you have to throw out in the yard. I don't know how those get in there. Anyway, your materials are going to vary on what your actual mix is if you're trying to really figure out what to mix to get the best out of what you can buy. And then you can't change suppliers using the old mix because it won't fit together, won't lock together the same way. Second thing is, don't use river sand. It's got silt in it, like clay particles. Absolutely destroys concrete. So river sand, that's a no-no. Beach sand. Well, you can put beach sand out in the rain, like typhoon season. Let it rain on it for 6 weeks. It'll rinse the salt down out of it. You can get rid of the salt. But the problem you have is the grains of sand are so small. They don't chalk up the rock and stuff. They're just, they're bigger than talcum powder, but you know what I mean. The sand that we got is about 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 by about half that thick. And the beach sand is, I don't know, 3 millimeters. Less than a 1/16. So I wouldn't use beach sand. You can't use it directly. If they could bring it up there and it tastes salty, don't put it in your concrete. Don't even put it in render on the walls. The salt absolutely destroys the Portland cement bond. And that's one of those things that works until it doesn't. And it doesn't is when your concrete cracks. Oh, water. Yeah, here we go. Black hole of YouTube. The weight of the water, we use the same weight of water as the weight of the Portland cement that you put in it. So we can figure out, we can weigh a bag. We have electronic scales we use for different things. Got them from eBay. I'm pretty sure. No, we got them from Lazada. We got those while we were in the Philippines. They're 220 volt, and they measure in kilograms and pounds. They're accurate to the second decimal place. On really heavy stuff, you lose 1 decimal place because the other number goes to the other side of the decimal. But they display to 3. So you can measure your cement, and then you can dump the cement in the mixer, and you can measure the bag, because the bag is not part of the cement weight. So you know how many grams, kilograms, pounds of Portland cement you threw in there. So you set the scale to 0 with a 5-gallon bucket on it, and you measure any way you want to measure to find out how much water you need to get to the same weight. We have a non-calibrated bucket, basically. We calibrated the guy that throws the water in. Nane's his name. He fills the first plastic, like a 2-gallon bucket. He fills up to about 1.25 inches or so from the top. What he can dump in there without spilling it on the ground. And then he scoops up so like a mark on the bucket, like a third of a bucket or whatever, and throws that in. And after he churns it for 3 minutes, he looks in there. And if the rock was bone dry, you're going to add a little bit of water. If the rock has been rained on for a couple days, there's already water in the rock and in the sand. And that water he put in there to make the mix is all he needs. You don't have to add anything. Now, if it's a real hot and also windy day, and you're doing a floor, you better put a little water. I know it's going to weaken it, but it goes away so quick, I don't think it has time to cause overhydration. But if you don't, there's no way to work with it. It'll be hard before you can get it into the wall. The walls do the same thing. They need just a little bit of water, but to get rid of honeycomb. We use a gas vibrator on the walls. We didn't use it on the columns. We had a guy up there with a 18-foot bamboo pole. You got to remember they're 20 foot tall. And he works that up and down around the outsides and in through the centers and all that. And just kept pulling it out and putting it back in a different place. And Florence was pouring the concrete in, bucket at a time. She loaded the concrete in all 20 of them columns and some of the walls. Anyway, you can vibrate them, a lot of the honeycomb away. But if you haven't got a little water to get it near the surface, you'll still get honeycomb. It won't be the depth of the outer piece of gravel, but it'll be maybe 3/8 of an inch deep. And it won't cover everything. Some of it will be perfect, and some of it will have that on it. But you put that extra quart of water in your mixer and douse it up and down in the column, or use your electric vibrator, or gas like we use, gas vibrator. Electric ones are fine. They got them you put on a 1/2-inch drill that work great for about 1/4 the money. But then you can pour without having honeycomb. And the other thing about concrete, columns in particular, not so much trouble with walls, but columns, they're so big that you have surface evaporation off the column. People tell you that it has 90% of strength in 27 days. And if you hose it down a couple of times a day, keep the surface damp, you'll make full strength. I don't dispute that. That's true. Try to get a Filipino to stand there and spray water on concrete he's already done with. They do it while you're standing there, but they think they're taking your money otherwise, and they walk off and don't do it anymore until you go back and call them over there and have them do it. They'll do it. They're completely cooperative and smile and friendly, but they just don't see the need. So what we did, after the first column, we had some hairline cracks on the surface. I'm sure they didn't go 32 inches out the other side, but I didn't like the looks of it. And they grabbed some cement and water and fine sand and run over the outside of them. And it looks all right. I mean, but I know that those couple hairline cracks is in column number 1. It's right next to the door we go in and out into the dining room. Anyway, after the first one, we bought some stuff called Coat Sealer. It's a latex paint made by Coat Saver. And it's cheap. It's really high on pigments. And we had a fellow there that, I don't know, he weighs 35 kilos maybe. He can't carry buckets of cement. But his younger brothers were working on the crew, and we had him handing out sodas and stuff so that people wouldn't be dehydrated in the sun. And we just got this paint, and as we stripped forms, he had a paint roller, and he rolled that Coat Saver onto every column. As they peeled the concrete off, he was right in there in the middle of them, putting that paint on. We had 0 cracks on any of the other 19 columns. That paint is what you see in the pictures. We've not skim coated the columns. They didn't need it. The only reason we skim coated the walls is we had those 3/4 inch pipes, the spacers for the thickness of the wall. We poured them 7 inches because that's what a 5 inches required by Philippine law on hollow blocks, although you see 4-inch everywhere. If you have a building permit, you better use 5 or they'll have you take it back down. And you have to pay to take it back down. They're not going to let you stay there and stay in the country. You're going to take it back down. And you may pay somebody to do it, but it's coming back down. But if you use the 5-inch and put the required render, which is also 3 centimeters is the minimum render they want on that stuff, comes out to 7 inches. So when we're doing the price comparison, we compare a 7-inch poured wall with a 7-inch hollow block and render. And for some reason, we cut our spacers that long. Texas Filipino cut his spacers 4 inches, and his house is doing great. It looks fine. It's terrible strong. And he has columns and beams in it, and they're bigger than the thickness of the wall. And they're monolithically poured. His columns and walls are monolithic. In our case, the wall and the upper tie beam are monolithic on the first floor. Second level, they're upper tie beam, lower tie beam, the 2 columns of the wall. That's all one big monolithic chunk. And in all cases, his and mine, we put bucks in for the shape of the windows. His are rectangular because he's going to buy store-bought, I think they're vinyl, some kind of fancy vinyl. And it fits into a smooth square opening. We built ours with jams in them with a stop, like you'd have for a door. On an entry door of a house, you got the inside door that goes against the stop, and the outside door, the heavier door, also goes against the stop. And there's a space between the 2 doors. If you didn't have that, the door would swing straight on through. And the windows, if you have a window, you press in it from the outside against a board that runs, a strip of lumber runs around the window jamb. And you have the sill at the bottom. Anyway, we cast all that into the walls when we poured them. And everybody that does poured concrete, you put your conduit in the wall before you pour it. It's dirt simple to do it before you pour it. It's ugly to do it later. It's expensive to do it later. And I didn't include that in the cost comparison of hollow block versus poured concrete. That's another big expense, trying to bury that conduit. We didn't run as much under the floor as we might have. We ran a lot in the ceiling of the first floor and the second level. There's 1,000 feet of concrete in there. And then the spider beam at the top, 560 feet of concrete, conduit in that. And then that outer round floor thing around the house, like an eye, I guess it is. There's some conduit in that, but it runs to security lights and stuff like that. There's not a great deal. And we ran that down over the center of the walls.